Back in the 1990s, when I started in book publishing, there was no textbook to teach you how to edit a book. And here I was, a 20-something young guy, very ambitious, trying to move up the ladder of book publishing, and there was no resource that I could reach out to and just absorb into my being. So what that stuck me with was learning how to edit books myself. And through the help of a lot of mentors over the years, I also needed to find out about the fundamentals of storytelling and of genre and all sorts of stuff. And so what I did is I read. So it took me about 25 years, and I boiled it all down to about a 100,000-word manuscript, but now I'm going to do it in video. So the Story Grid came about as a way to edit a book, to teach somebody, a writer, what is specifically wrong with their novel and how to fix it. When I was working on the Story Grid itself for years, I would kind of hide it. I didn't really want the writers to know exactly what I was talking about, and so what I do is I translate the methodology of the Story Grid into very easily doable tasks to specific writers. And then one year when I was working on a book with Steven Pressfield called Gates of Fire, and I offhandedly said, "Oh, great, I'll just throw the grid on it." And he said, "What's the grid?"
Yeah, I remember the first time that Sean mentioned the word, said, "I'm going to put the grid on it," and I delivered a manuscript to him, and I had two reactions to it. The first one was that I was completely terrified because I thought that like the grid was this magical thing that was going to expose all the weaknesses, and Sean was going to be sending me back to square one, you know, for page one rewrite. So I was terrified on the one hand, but on the other hand, I thought to myself, how lucky am I that I have an editor that has a system, has evolved some kind of a system that's really going to work. So he may send me back for a page one rewrite, and it may make me work like hell, but the bottom line is at the end, the thing is going to come out the best it can possibly be. But the thing these days is that if you're self-publishing or if you're indie publishing, or even if you have a real publisher, a mainstream publisher, and you have an editor, you're assigned an editor, usually the editor is so busy with marketing and internal politics and acquisition of new material that you don't really get an editor that's going to take the time. Is going to, you know, nowadays you as a writer, you have to deliver publication-ready material. It's got to be working. So you got to be your own editor these days. So that's why this book is so important. The Story Grid is so important for writers because there's no other place you can learn this. You know, they don't teach it at Harvard. They don't teach it at Random House. You can't find a book about this in the writing section of you know, Barnes & Noble. Even if you don't absorb, you know, 100% of this, all the technical stuff, at least you get a concept of how an editor thinks and how you have to think as a writer about your own material.
So I ended up explaining it to Steve years and years ago, and Steve said to me, you know, this is really important. This is the kind of document that every writer is really going to want to have. Because the biggest problem that he faced as a writer was after he had a finished draft, how was he going to take it to the next level? How was he going to make it better? In fact, how was he going to be able to edit himself before he actually found an editor at a publishing house to help him out? So over the past 15 years, I've been working on this document, and at last it's ready to go, and I think it's in very good shape. So the Story Grid is a methodology to teach writers how to edit themselves. Over the next few videos, I'll be teaching you how to create your own story grids. But before we can do that, we really need to figure out what kind of story do we really have here. And the way we're going to figure that out is by reviewing the concept of genre. And in the next video, I will go through my entire belief system in genre, which is called the 5-leaf genre clover. A genre is just a very fancy word classifying every story ever told since the beginning of time. What I've done is I've created something called the 5-leaf genre clover. If I was to give one piece of advice to a new writer, I would say, learn your genres, and it's going to serve you so well in the future, I can't even tell you.